There is a specific kind of silence in an enterprise server room that smells like ozone and absolute job security. It is the rhythmic, deep hum of 60 cooling fans keeping the digital heartbeat of a massive freight logistics firm from having a catastrophic cardiac arrest. For 14 years, I have been the head cardiologist of this infrastructure. I am not a junior help desk technician. I am not an at-will employee, and I am certainly not someone you can boss around. My name is Harlan Vance, a 54-year-old independent enterprise systems consultant and principal of Vance Enterprise Technologies, LLC. I own the proprietary code that bridges our modern web platforms with legacy mainframe databases, the very software that processes over $60 million in daily shipping manifests across North America. I am also the only person who knows why the Central Database Archive from 2016 is strictly flagged as do not touch under pain of total system failure. Then came Chad Langley. Chad did not merely walk into the headquarters of Apex Logistics Solutions. He vibrated into it with the hyperactive vanity of a private equity transplant. He was our newly appointed Vice President of Operations, armed with a resume that looked like it had been generated by an artificial intelligence bot during a manic spree. He had teeth that were blindingly white, a tailored suit that was far too blue, and a firm handshake that felt like clutching a damp sea sponge wrapped in fine sandpaper. Chad was the kind of corporate climber who weaponized phrases like paradigm shift, core competency, and low-hanging fruit without a single trace of self-awareness. He was precisely the type of executive who believed cloud computing literally meant data floated around in rain clouds. I knew our company was heading toward a collision the moment Chad strutted past my workstation in late October. My desk is situated in a quiet, secluded alcove on the third floor, a specialized workspace I specifically negotiated into my vendor contract back in 2018. Chad stopped abruptly, reached over my shoulder, and tapped his heavy gold college ring directly onto my secondary monitor. "Hey, Harlan," he said, his tone dripping with unearned superiority. "Can we get the wireless network boosted in the main conference room immediately? I am trying to stream an executive leadership seminar and the video keeps buffering. My soul briefly left my body, walked down the hallway to get a cup of black coffee, and returned just to stare at him in sheer disbelief. I slowly looked up from my dual-screen terminal, where I was actively writing complex SQL optimization queries to handle 45,000 live freight dispatches. "I do not manage desktop connectivity or wireless signals, Chad," I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat and professional. "I manage the core enterprise architecture and database middleware. You will need to submit an internal ticket with the help desk team for local infrastructure issues." Chad let out a short, barking laugh that echoed across the cubicles. Right. Tech is tech, Harlan. Just make it happen. We are streamlining operations around here and we need agility. We cannot have senior people hidden in corners doing obscure work." Before I could explain that asking an enterprise software architect to fix local wireless routers is like asking a neurosurgeon to trim your hedges because both tasks involve cutting instruments, he spun on his heel and walked away. That was my first introduction to Chad Langley, and it marked the beginning of a spectacular masterclass in corporate self-destruction. To understand the sheer magnitude of the disaster Chad was about to create, you must understand the legal realities of corporate contracting. When a middle manager has been with a company for a long time, arrogant newcomers often mistake them for regular staff. They see you in the hallway every morning. They see your security badge. They see you drinking the awful break room coffee. But from a legal perspective, the difference is night and day. Regular staff members are at-will employees who can be dismissed with a brief conversation and a severance package. I, however, operated under a comprehensive B2B master services agreement. My contract with Apex Logistics Solutions was not an employment agreement. It was an extensive corporate service contract featuring explicit protection clauses. Terminating my services required a mandatory 45 days written notice, a formal resolution approved by the board of directors, and a liquidated damages payout that would cause any chief financial officer to break into a cold sweat. Furthermore, under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106, all custom database adapters, proprietary middleware, and integration scripts I created remained the exclusive intellectual property of Vance Enterprise Technologies LLC until full contractual buyout terms were satisfied. Chad Langley did not read my contract. Chad likely did not read the company handbook either. He was far too busy attempting to disrupt our department to bother with legal details. 2 days after our encounter regarding the wireless network, my inbox began filling up with automated summonses. They were not polite requests, they were aggressive calendar invites. All hands operational alignment, 8 o'clock in the morning, mandatory attendance. I ignored every single one of them. Under the terms of my master services agreement, my billable time is allocated strictly to technical deliverables, architecture maintenance, and scheduled database optimizations. If an executive requires my presence in general strategy meetings, my contract stipulates a specialized consulting rate of 4 times my standard hourly fee, accompanied by a formal written scope change order, unless someone was prepared to authorize that expenditure and put on a fresh pair of slacks. I had zero interest in sitting through a 2-hour presentation about Chad's vision for a lean corporate future. Chad Langley was not accustomed to being ignored by people he presumed to be his subordinates. Within 48 hours, he began loitering near my alcove, hovering like an unwelcome draft. "Harlan, I noticed you were absent from the morning operational stand-up again," Chad said, leaning casually against my cubicle partition and crossing his arms to display his oversized luxury wristwatch. "I was executing an off-peak database migration for our automated tracking pipeline, so the quarterly financial report does not crash the system." "On Friday afternoon," I replied, keeping my eyes fixed on my terminal screen. "Details of the migration were provided in the weekly scope report sent to your office yesterday." "We need to operate as a unified team, Harlan," Chad said, narrowing his eyes. "Silos are the absolute enemy of modern operational progress." "My contract clearly defines my specific scope of work, Chad," I answered, turning my chair to face him directly. "Internal team-building exercises and operational stand-ups fall outside my vendor parameters." Chad smirked. That condescending, patronizing grin of a middle manager who mistakenly believes his job title gives him absolute authority over the physical universe. "We might need to reevaluate that rigid attitude of yours, Harlan. Technology is a basic commodity nowadays, and everyone in this building is entirely replaceable." I looked him straight in the eye, my expression utterly unreadable. "My proprietary code is not a commodity, Chad. It is the structural integrity of this entire enterprise. You do not knock down the supporting foundation while standing on the top floor." "We shall see about that," Chad sneered. "I am bringing in new external tools and modern platforms. We are going to clean house around here." I watched him walk away toward his corner glass office, where he undoubtedly spent 3 hours a day updating his social media profile with buzzwords about transformative leadership. Chad looked at me and saw a 54-year-old man wearing comfortable sweaters and sensible shoes, assuming I was a legacy worker waiting around for retirement. He had no idea that he was looking at the sole engineer holding the structural keys to the enterprise. By Thursday afternoon, the atmosphere in the building had shifted dramatically. The veteran managers, the ones who actually understood how our logistics systems functioned, were visibly anxious. Our chief information officer, a battle-tested executive named Harvey Bennett, walked over to my desk holding a steaming mug of coffee. "Chad is asking for administrative credentials," Harvey whispered, glancing nervously toward the glass office down the hall. "He wants full root access to the central server directories, the encryption keys, and the backup archives. He claims he wants to perform an independent efficiency audit." "Did you grant him administrative access?" I asked quietly. "I told him he must submit a formal request through proper corporate governance," Harvey said, shaking his head. "But he is incredibly persistent. He has the ear of several board members right now because they think he is a turnaround wizard. Let him audit whatever he wants," I said with a cold, calm smile. "He does not possess the technical background to comprehend the architecture anyway." "He is dangerous, Harlan," Harvey warned. "He is making rash promises to cut operational overhead by 30% before the end of the quarter. He is heading straight for a massive mistake." I returned home that evening to my quiet house in the suburbs. I sat in my home office under the soft glow of my dual monitors, pulled up a digital copy of my master services agreement, and carefully reviewed every clause, definition, and termination covenant. I was not being paranoid. I was being prepared. Men like Chad Langley are entirely predictable. They require a public victory and a convenient scapegoat, and Chad was planning to make me the villain of his operational turnaround story. The following morning at 9:15, the storm finally arrived. It did not start with a heated argument or a dramatic confrontation in the hallway. It arrived as a single bold notification on my corporate messaging application. "Give me the shared drive and clean out your desk." Chad had posted the message in a direct thread and CC'd our human resources manager, Sarah Jenkins, a well-meaning but timid administrator who possessed zero knowledge of technical vendor contracts. I stared at the screen for several long seconds. I felt no panic, no anger, and no stress. I simply felt the precise, methodical click of a professional taking action. I took a high-resolution screenshot of the message. I captured the exact timestamp. I saved the entire recipient list. Rule number 1 of corporate dispute management: never interrupt an adversary while he is committing an unforced error. And Chad Langley had just committed an error of epic proportions. I opened my private email client. Not the company account, but the encrypted business email of Vance Enterprise Technologies, LLC. I drafted a concise message to my legal counsel, Attorney Julian Cross of Cross & Partners. Attorney Julian is a formidable contract lawyer who specializes in commercial litigation and views breach of contract cases with the ferocious enthusiasm of a shark spotting a leaking raft subject. Material breach of B2B Master Services Agreement. Apex Logistics Solutions. Dear Julian, please review the attached screenshot. The Vice President of Operations has attempted a summary termination via instant message without providing the contractually mandated 45 days written notice or obtaining board consensus. Furthermore, he is demanding administrative access to proprietary source code that remains the exclusive intellectual property of my firm under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106. Please initiate formal legal protections immediately. I hit send, took a sip of my morning coffee, and waited. 20 minutes after the message was sent, Chad Langley emerged from his office. He walked down the corridor with an inflated sense of triumph, clearly expecting to find my desk cleared out and my belongings packed into a cardboard box. When he saw me sitting calmly at my terminal, his expression transformed into bewildered annoyance. "Did you receive my direct message, Harlan?" Chad demanded, raising his voice so it echoed across the surrounding workstations. "I did indeed," I replied in a measured, relaxed tone, "and I have already forwarded it to my legal counsel for formal review. As an independent vendor, operating under a master services agreement rather than an at-will employee, any modification or termination of our contract must proceed through official corporate legal channels." Chad's face flushed a deep shade of crimson that clashed horribly with his navy suit. "I am the Vice President of Operations. I am the legal channel around here. I want those administrative passwords, Harlan, and I want them right now. Those credentials govern the encrypted database containing our regulatory transport logs and financial projections," I explained calmly. "My commercial liability insurance strictly forbids me from transferring root administrative privileges to unauthorized personnel. At present, Chad, you are not authorized to hold those keys." He spluttered in rage. "I am your boss. You are my client's representative," I corrected gently. "There is a profound legal distinction. We will see about that." Chad snarled before turning around and marching aggressively toward the Human Resources Department. I watched him walk away, then quieted my active console windows. As a seasoned professional, I would never engage in system sabotage. However, per standard vendor governance protocols, I immediately paused all non-contractual background maintenance scripts. Specifically, I halted the custom memory cache cleanup script that runs hourly on the main dispatch server, as well as the automated script that suppresses false hardware alerts across the logistics floor. Within 45 minutes, the initial ripple effects began to manifest. Is the primary dispatch terminal slowing down for anyone else? A logistics coordinator shouted from across the floor, "My operational dashboard is freezing up." Why is the primary network printer throwing error codes? Another worker complained. I sat at my desk, typing out system documentation with unhurried precision. Under the terms of my master services agreement, I am obligated to maintain core system availability, but routine desktop troubleshooting requires formal internal support tickets, and no one was submitting tickets because the floor was tumbling into confusion. Chad came storming out of human resources an hour later, looking furious. Sarah Jenkins followed behind him, looking pale and nervous. Sarah had obviously pulled my corporate file and realized that attempting to fire an independent vendor without board approval was legally equivalent to unilaterally disconnecting the building's electrical power grid. You think you are being clever, Harlan? Chad hissed as he passed my cubicle. I am expensive, Chad, I replied smoothly. There is a massive difference. He slammed his office door so hard the glass panels rattled. Moments later, my mobile phone buzzed with an incoming text from Attorney Julian Cross, formal cease and desist notice issued to General Counsel and Board of Directors. Citing material breach of contract, Warren Act notice violations, and statutory intellectual property protections under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106. Do not surrender physical equipment or digital access tokens under any circumstances. At 1:15 in the afternoon, the legal correspondence landed in the email inboxes of General Counsel and the Executive Committee. It was an absolute masterpiece of commercial law, replete with references to Illinois contract law, explicit citations of my vendor agreement, and an unequivocal warning that any physical interference with my equipment would result in personal, tortious interference litigation against Chad Langley. Instead of seeking advice from General Counsel, Chad's ego completely overruled his judgment. He opened the email thread and typed a hasty, arrogant reply to the entire distribution list. This is absurd. Attorney letters did not intimidate me. Harlan is an external contractor, and contractors get cut when they fail to align with operational leadership. As VP of Operations, I say he is out. He has until 5 o'clock to pack his things, or security will remove him. A new external technical team arrives on Monday. I stared at his reply in genuine astonishment. Chad had just put it in writing that he was deliberately overriding corporate governance, ignoring General Counsel, and violating a binding commercial contract. Harvey Bennett walked over to my alcove, looking as though he had aged 10 years since breakfast. He just informed me that he has hired a third-party technical crew to re-image the primary database server this afternoon. Harvey said, his voice shaking. A third-party technical crew? I repeated. Who did he hire? 2 college-aged coders in hoodies and an entry-level technician from a retail repair shop, Harvey said in disbelief. Chad claims they can migrate our entire infrastructure to a cheap public platform called Nebula Stream before the weekend. Nebula Stream? I asked, stunned. That is an unencrypted cloud storage platform designed for independent video game developers. It lacks basic enterprise security, violates federal transport regulations, and fails HIPAA compliance standards for our medical freight contracts. I explained to him, Harvey said, rubbing his temples. He told me his 21-year-old nephew recommended it because it is cheap and easy to use. I took a deep breath, opened a fresh text file on my private drive, and created a document titled The Chad Chronicles Log Entry 1430 Hours. VP of Operations authorizing uncertified third-party personnel to access protected logistics servers. Imminent risk of data corruption and federal compliance violation high. At 3:15 in the afternoon, the external technical crew arrived. They walked onto the logistics floor, carrying basic tools and external hard drives, looking utterly out of their depth. Chad exited his glass office to greet them like a general welcoming fresh troops. Welcome to the command center, gentlemen, Chad announced loudly, guiding them directly toward the central server terminal near my workstation. We are going to replace this legacy setup with Nebula Stream. Chad, I said, speaking with absolute clarity so everyone nearby could hear me clearly. Re-imaging this server and migrating live relational databases to an unsealed public platform constitutes a severe breach of federal transport regulations, a breach of fiduciary duty, and a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, eased the contractor. Chad told the technicians with a wave of his hand. He is just upset because his position is being eliminated. Connect your drives and initialize the migration wizard. I did not raise my voice or physically intervene. Instead, I opened my admin monitoring tool and began capturing real-time diagnostic logs, documenting every single command executed by the external crew. One of the young technicians plugged an external drive into the main terminal. "Wow, this operating system is running a highly customized Unix kernel," he remarked, scratching his head. "Get rid of it," Chad ordered without hesitation. "Replace it with a basic user-friendly operating system." Initializing full system override, the technician said, hitting the enter key. The screen flickered violently. What happened next was an immediate, spectacular collapse of our enterprise logistics framework. On the wall-mounted tracking monitors across the main logistics pit, the real-time telemetry displaying hundreds of active freight trucks suddenly froze. Green tracking indicators turned yellow, then red, and then disappeared entirely. "Hey, the live satellite tracking feed just died," a dispatcher screamed from his desk. "I have 40 semi-trucks carrying perishable goods across the Midwest, and I cannot see their locations. My routing dashboard just completely went dark," another worker shouted. "I have a driver stuck in a heavy winter storm in North Dakota who needs emergency detour instructions right now." Chad frowned, stepping toward the monitors. "It is merely a temporary buffering phase during the cloud migration. Everything will stabilize shortly." It did not stabilize because the main server was being swamped by an unoptimized data transfer. Our enterprise voice-over IP phone network collapsed under the bandwidth congestion. 40 telephone lines went dead simultaneously, followed by 40 dispatchers frantically shouting into their headsets. "What did you do?" Harvey Bennett yelled, rushing out of his office with his tie completely askew. "We are modernizing the department," Chad shouted back over the rising chaos. "You have to break a few eggs to make an operational omelet." "You did not break eggs. You severed our operational lifeline," Harvey roared. I sat quietly at my workstation watching my diagnostic screen. Diagnostic errors were cascading down the screen in a rapid waterfall of bright red text. Error. Relational database locked. Error. API token expired. Error. System integrity verification failed. Then arrived the ultimate financial catastrophe: the automated billing engine. Our custom invoicing script was scheduled to run automatically at 4:15 in the afternoon to process Daislistener billing. The script attempted to query the central database for completed freight deliveries, but because Chad's technical crew was actively overwriting the relational indexes, the database returned null values. Following its program safety protocol for missing pricing data, the automated engine defaulted to 0 values. Across our cloud gateway, hundreds of finalized electronic invoices were instantly generated for $0 and emailed directly to our largest corporate clients. I watched the outgoing mail queue spike dramatically. 700 invoices sent. 1,400 invoices sent. "Chad," I said, breaking my silence in a clear, carrying voice. "The automated billing system just generated and transmitted 1,400 $0 invoices to Amazon, Walmart, and the Department of Defense." Chad spun around, his face turning ghostly white. "What? What did you just say?" "The billing script executed against an unindexed database table," I explained calmly. "You just officially informed our top clients that their freight shipments for the past month are entirely free of charge. Stop the system. Cancel the emails." Chad shrieked, panic finally breaking through his arrogant facade. "Fix it right now, Harlan." I held up my hands in a calm, neutral gesture. "I am unauthorized to perform administrative interventions, Chad. Remember? You terminated my services on messaging earlier today. I will reinstate you. I will pay whatever you want. Just fix it," he screamed, sweat pouring down his face. "I require a formal written work order, full contract reinstatement approved by General Counsel, a 300% rate adjustment, and a written apology," I stated smoothly. Before Chad could reply, his mobile phone began ringing furiously. It was 4:30 in the afternoon, the scheduled time for a critical virtual presentation with our primary private equity investors and board chairman Alistair Prescott. "Oh no," Chad whispered, staring at his phone in absolute terror. Chad sprinted into his glass office, set up his tablet computer on a stack of manuals, smoothed his hair, and attempted to put on a confident corporate expression before connecting to the high-stakes video conference. Through the glass partition, we could hear his trembling voice. "Good afternoon, Chairman Prescott, members of the board," Chad stammered. "Apologies for any audio delay. We are currently conducting an unannounced corporate sustainability exercise here at headquarters to optimize energy efficiency." A booming, stern voice resonated from the tablet speaker. "Mr. Langley, we are receiving urgent notifications from our key accounts regarding erroneous $0 invoices. Show us the real-time operational dashboard immediately." Chad panicked, aiming his tablet camera at his laptop screen. However, because his laptop was connected to the internal corporate wireless network, which had crashed along with the central authentication server, his screen displayed only a blank web error page. "Ah, we are experiencing minor atmospheric interference with our cloud gateway," Chad lied desperately. "Atmospheric interference?" Chairman Prescott snapped from the speaker. "Mr. Langley, where is Harlan Vance? We need an immediate technical assessment from our principal enterprise architect." "He is unavailable," Chad stammered, glancing nervously out the window at me. "He is attending to a personal matter." "I am right here, Chairman Prescott," I called out loudly from the hallway. My voice cut straight through the glass partition and echoed directly into the tablet microphone. "Was that Harlan Vance?" Chairman Prescott demanded, his tone ice. "No, that was merely an external maintenance worker." Chad lied frantically. I stood up, walked over to the glass wall of Chad's office, and held up my tablet. Displayed on the screen in large, bold text was my real-time diagnostic summary. "Critical system outage. Unauthorized database migration executed by uncertified third-party personnel. Master indexes overwritten. GPS tracking offline. Financial invoicing corrupted." Chairman Prescott saw the text clearly on the video feed. He saw the dark, chaotic office floor. He saw the two frightened technicians standing near the smoking server console. "Mr. Langley," Chairman Prescott said in a tone of lethal calm, "disconnect this call immediately. Do not touch another piece of equipment in that building. We are convening an emergency executive session right now." The video call disconnected. Chad stood motionless in his office, looking like a man who had just realized he was standing in the middle of an active minefield. 10 minutes later, my mobile phone rang. It was Chairman Alistair Prescott calling directly via satellite phone from his vessel in the Maldives. "Harlan," Chairman Prescott said crisply, "Harvey Bennett has informed me of the situation. Can you restore our enterprise logistics network? I can restore the database indexes and tracking telemetry using my secure, off-site encrypted backup," I replied. "It will require approximately 3 hours of specialized reconstruction work." "Do it immediately," Prescott commanded. "I cannot perform unauthorized work without a valid contract, Chairman," I stated firmly. "I require a formal written withdrawal of Chad Langley's termination notice, a 300% increase in my consulting retainer, direct reporting authority to the board of directors, and full veto power over all enterprise architecture decisions." "Done," Chairman Prescott agreed instantly. "Fix the system. We will address Mr. Langley's conduct when I land." By 8 o'clock that evening, I had successfully re-indexed the relational databases, restored the master encryption keys, and brought the live GPS tracking network back online. The $0 invoices were isolated, and formal corrections were issued to our corporate clients. The following morning at 9:30, Chad Langley made a desperate final attempt to save his career. He called an emergency all-hands meeting in the main atrium, standing on the mezzanine balcony in a fresh suit. "Team," Chad projected his voice over the assembled crowd of 100 employees. "Yesterday we experienced a technical hiccup during a necessary system upgrade. Unfortunately, our efforts were hampered by legacy contractors who were unwilling to support our modern vision for growth." Before he could finish his sentence, Evelyn Moore stepped forward from the crowd. "Mr. Langley," Evelyn interrupted sharply, "are you referring to the enterprise architect who flagged the $18 million invoicing error you personally authorized? An error that would have legally waived our billing rights on 55,000 freight shipments." The crowd gasped in shock. "This is not the appropriate venue for this discussion," Chad shouted, his face turning bright red. "Then where is the appropriate venue?" Kevin Albright from the dispatch team interjected angrily. My drivers were blind in a North Dakota blizzard for 2 hours because of your unauthorized cloud experiment. At 11 o'clock, the elevator doors opened. Attorney Julian Cross arrived wearing an impeccably tailored suit, flanked by General Counsel and Chairman Alistair Prescott, who had just arrived by private aircraft. They walked straight past reception and entered the main boardroom. 10 minutes later, Chad Langley was summoned into the room. Mr. Langley, Chairman Prescott said coldly, sliding a thick legal file across the table, you attempted to illegally terminate a protected enterprise vendor, violated corporate governance, breached federal transport compliance standards, and caused $18 million in operational risk through gross negligence. Chad opened his mouth to argue, but Attorney Julian Cross raised a hand. We have documented every single command executed by your uncertified technicians, Julian stated smoothly. Vance Enterprise Technologies, LLC, is prepared to file a $7,500,000 lawsuit for breach of contract and tortious interference unless corrective action is taken immediately. Chad Langley was formally placed on administrative leave, pending termination for gross negligence. Security guard Earl Thomas entered the boardroom, escorted Chad to his office to pack his personal belongings, and confiscated his executive badge. As Chad was led past my workstation toward the elevators, he stopped and glared at me with deep bitterness. You think you won, Harlan? You are just stuck in the past. My past pays considerably better than your future, Chad, I replied, signing my new 3-year master services agreement with a silver pen. Today, the office is wonderfully quiet. My new vendor contract provides an unprecedented retainer, direct board reporting, and absolute authority over enterprise systems. The new vice president of operations, a respectful professional named Peter, always knocks politely on my cubicle partition and asks for permission before approaching my desk. And every evening at 6 o'clock, as the server fans hum their steady, comforting melody, I look out over a fully operational logistics network, knowing that true expertise will always prevail over corporate arrogance.